I saw my fiancée in bed with my best friend the day before our wedding. I walked away. Ethan's world collapses when, just one day before his wedding, an Instagram story exposes his fiancée Victoria in bed with his childhood friend Derek. Now, let's dive into the story. The city was painted in gold that evening, the kind of sunset that made even the coldest streets look warm. Ethan stood by his apartment window, holding a glass of champagne, his reflection shimmering against the skyline. The tuxedo hanging on the chair beside him wasn't just fabric. It was a symbol of everything he'd waited for. Tomorrow, he was going to marry her, Victoria Hale, the woman who had turned his empty apartment into a home and his ordinary days into something worth waking up for. Boxes of decorations and wedding gifts filled the living room. A photo of him and Victoria laughing at a picnic sat proudly on the shelf. The apartment still smelled faintly of her perfume, sweet, floral, and familiar. Everything was perfect. At least, that's what he believed. Ethan, bro, you're zoning out again. Derek's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. He turned to see his best friend, his brother since kindergarten, standing in the doorway holding 2 bottles of beer. Just thinking, Ethan smiled, taking one. You nervous? Derek asked, smirking. Should I be? Man, you're getting married tomorrow. If you're not nervous, you're either crazy or lying. Ethan laughed, leaning against the counter. Maybe a little of both. Derek clinked his bottle against his. To the end of an era and the start of a better one. Ethan didn't notice the strange flicker in Derek's eyes. A hesitation, almost guilt, but it vanished behind a grin. Later that evening, Ethan was surrounded by his groomsmen, laughter echoing through the apartment. The night was filled with stories, some embarrassing, others nostalgic. Remember when you and Derek got suspended for setting off fireworks in the school bathroom? One of them joked. Ethan laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his drink. We were idiots back then. Still are. Derek shot back playfully. It was a simple moment. Familiar. Safe. But beneath that laughter, somewhere in the back of Derek's mind, a secret was smoldering. One he knew would burn everything if it ever came to light. Later that night, when the guys had left and silence filled the room again, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a message from Victoria. Babe, I'm with the girls. We're staying at the hotel tonight. I can't wait to see you at the altar. Sleep early, okay? Tomorrow is our day, Redheart. Ethan smiled as he read it. He could picture her, curled up in bed, talking to her bridesmaids, probably teasing him about crying at the wedding. He texted back, I love you, Vic, more than you'll ever know. A typing bubble appeared for a few seconds, then disappeared. He figured she'd fallen asleep. He didn't know she was wide awake, and she wasn't alone. The next morning would be his wedding day. Tonight, it was just him, his thoughts, and a heart full of hope. He walked to his bedroom, brushing his hand against the tuxedo one last time before turning off the light. He whispered to himself, Tomorrow, I get to marry the love of my life. And somewhere across the city, in a hotel room wrapped in shadows and sin, his fiancée whispered the same words, but not to him. Sometimes, life gives you silence before a storm, not as peace, but as warning. Ethan thought he was one night away from forever. He didn't know he was one night away from losing everything. The morning sun slipped through the blinds, painting Ethan's face in gold. He stirred awake to the faint hum of city traffic outside. For a brief second, everything felt right. Today was supposed to be the day he'd waited 3 years for, his wedding day. He reached for his phone on the bedside table, smiling at the thought of seeing a good morning text from Victoria. Nothing, just notifications, group chats from friends teasing him about being a married man by noon, messages from his mother reminding him not to forget his cufflinks, and one from the wedding planner confirming the timeline. He chuckled softly, scrolling lazily through his phone. Then, his screen lit up again. A notification from Instagram. At bridesmaid, Jenny added to her story. Jenny, one of Victoria's bridesmaids. The wild one. The one Victoria used to complain about. She's always posting everything online. Victoria had once said with an eye roll. Ethan smiled faintly. Probably some behind-the-scenes shots from the hotel. He thought maybe Victoria and the girls were doing face masks, laughing, celebrating their last night before the wedding. Curious, he tapped on the story. It loaded for a moment, and then the world stopped. A hotel room, dim lighting, sheets tangled. The camera moved shakily, as if filmed in a hurry. Two figures, one of them unmistakably Victoria. Her hair spilled across the pillow, her bare shoulder exposed. And next to her, Derek. Ethan's heart stopped. He froze, staring at the screen as his mind screamed that it had to be fake. Some kind of prank. A nightmare. But the timestamp in the corner told him otherwise. 2:04 a.m. Last night. The caption read, "Some people just can't wait for the wedding night." The phone slipped from Ethan's hand. He felt the air leave his lungs. His heart thundered in his chest, heavy and unsteady. "No," he whispered, reaching for the phone again. He replayed the story again and again, hoping that somehow the angle, the lighting, anything would prove him wrong. But it was them. There was no mistaking Derek's tattoo on his shoulder. No mistaking Victoria's necklace, the one he had given her last Christmas. He whispered to himself, as if saying out loud could undo it. "This isn't real. This can't be real." He called her. No answer. He called again. Still no answer. Then Derek. Voicemail. He tried Jenny's number. Disconnected. It was like the world had collectively decided to mute him. His hands shook as he scrolled back to the story. It was gone. Deleted. But the image was burned into his mind. Every detail. Every betrayal. The tuxedo hanging by the wall looked different now. The wedding gifts mocked him from their boxes. The framed photo of him and Victoria, laughing in the rain, fell when he brushed against the table, the glass shattering on the floor. He sank to his knees. For the first time in years, Ethan cried. Not loud, not angry, just silent tears. The kind that carried the weight of disbelief. He didn't even realize how long he stayed there. Hours passed. Morning turned to afternoon. His phone buzzed again. Text from family, the wedding planner, the driver waiting to pick him up. He ignored them all. Then, a message from Victoria appeared. "Hey, love, my phone died last night. Can't wait to see you soon, red heart." He stared at the screen in silence. That heart emoji, it used to make him smile. Now it made him sick. By evening, his apartment looked like a ghost town of memories. The tuxedo was back in its cover. The wedding ring sat alone on the kitchen counter. Ethan's reflection in the mirror looked nothing like the man from last night. His eyes were hollow, his expression cold. He whispered, "She lied to me, they both did." He opened his phone one more time, scrolling through old photos, her laughing in his arms. Derek standing beside him at birthdays, at barbecues, at every milestone. His best friend, his fiancée, and in one night, they had turned his entire world into a lie. The next morning, when the sun rose again, Ethan didn't feel excitement, just exhaustion, the kind that comes when something inside you breaks beyond repair. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He just grabbed his car keys, left the tuxedo behind, and drove, his chest hollow, his thoughts replaying that Instagram story over and over like a haunting song. He didn't know where he was headed. All he knew was that he needed to see it for himself. The truth doesn't always scream. It whispers, shows up in a single image, and quietly destroys everything you believed in. For Ethan, that one photo didn't just break his heart. It shattered his entire world. The city was still half asleep when Ethan parked his car outside the Grand Victoria Hotel, a place he had chosen for their honeymoon suite. Now, it was the scene of his heartbreak. The morning air was cold and quiet, yet every sound, car tires, footsteps, distant voices, felt painfully loud. Ethan sat in his car for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel. His mind screamed to leave, but his heart whispered, "You need to see it for yourself." He took the elevator to the 5th floor. Room 512. He remembered the number from the hotel booking confirmation. Victoria had texted it to him last week, just in case. Each step down the hallway echoed like a drumbeat in his chest. His hand trembled as he held the spare key card she'd given him months ago. "For emergencies," she'd said, laughing. He swallowed hard. "This counts as an emergency," he muttered under his breath. He slid the card into the slot. Beep. The door clicked open. The curtains were drawn. The room dim. The smell of perfume and cheap champagne hung in the air. He stood in the doorway, frozen. Time stopped. Victoria stirred first. Her eyes fluttered open. She sat up quickly, clutching the bedsheet to her chest. "Ethan?" Her voice was barely a whisper. And beside her, Derek, his best friend. "Ethan, man, wait," Derek stammered, scrambling out of bed. Ethan didn't speak, didn't yell, didn't move. He just looked at them, the woman he loved, the man he trusted most. And in that silence, they both realized he didn't need an explanation. The truth was standing right in front of him. Victoria's voice broke the quiet. "It's not what it looks like." Ethan let out a short, hollow laugh. "Not what it looks like," he said softly, almost trembling. "Do you even hear yourself?" She took a step toward him, her eyes wet. "Please, I made a mistake." He raised a hand. "Don't," he said sharply, the calm in his voice scarier than any shout. "Don't call it a mistake. A mistake is spilling coffee on my shirt. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary." He took a shaky breath. This is a choice." Derek spoke up, guilt etched across his face. "Ethan, it just happened, okay? We didn't mean for it to." Ethan's eyes snapped toward him. "You didn't mean to sleep with my fiancée the night before my wedding?" Derek looked down, unable to meet his gaze. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Then Ethan walked toward the nightstand. On it was a wedding ring. Her ring, gleaming under the dim lamplight. He picked it up, turned it in his fingers. He looked at Victoria one last time. Her lips trembled, her eyes full of tears. "Ethan!" "Please, don't leave me. We can fix this." He placed the ring gently on the table beside her. "You broke something that can't be fixed," he said quietly. She sobbed. "I love you." He shook his head. "No, Victoria. You love being loved. That's not the same thing." He turned to Derek. "You were my brother," Ethan said, voice shaking. "You stood beside me through everything. School, heartbreaks, loss. And this is how you repay me." Derek tried to speak, but no words came. Ethan's hand clenched for a second, like he wanted to hit him, but he didn't. He exhaled slowly, forcing the rage out with his breath. Then he simply said, "I hope you both get everything you deserve." And with that, he walked out. The hallway outside felt endless, every step heavier than the last. When he reached the elevator, his chest finally broke. Tears streamed down his face, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of love lost. He didn't even wipe them away. He just stood there as the doors closed, sealing that chapter of his life forever. Outside, the morning light blinded him. People passed by, laughing, living, unaware that a man had just watched his world collapse behind him. Ethan got into his car, started the engine, and sat there for a long time before driving away. No anger, no shouting, just silence, the kind that ends everything. He drove until the city disappeared behind him, past the bridges, past the streets they used to walk together. Somewhere along that road, he whispered goodbye. Not to her, not to Derek, but to the man he used to be, the one who believed that love was unbreakable. Sometimes, walking away isn't the hardest part. It's realizing the people you die for never deserve your loyalty in the first place. Ethan didn't shout. He didn't fight. He simply walked away. And that silence was louder than anything he could have said. The morning after Ethan walked out of that hotel room, the world outside went on as usual. Cars still honked. Birds still sang. The city still moved. But for Ethan, time had stopped. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He had just driven. Hours of endless road until the city disappeared and the weight of betrayal caught up to him. He parked his car near a quiet lake on the outskirts of town. The early fog drifted across the water, soft and cold, like the silence inside him. He sat there, watching the still surface reflect the sky, and whispered, "Why?" There was no answer, just the sound of wind and his own breathing. Cutscene later that day. His phone was a storm of missed calls. Mom, 13 missed calls. Victoria, 27 missed calls. Derek, blocked. Wedding planner, best man, hotel manager, dozens of messages, all filled with confusion and panic. Ethan, are you okay? Where are you? People are arriving. This has to be a misunderstanding. He didn't reply to any of them. Instead, he texted one person, the wedding planner. Cancel everything. No explanation. No emotion. Just 3 words. The news spread fast. By noon, everyone knew. Guests started calling. Vendors demanded confirmation. Victoria's parents showed up at his apartment in tears, insisting it was all a mistake. She told us she's sorry. Her mother pleaded. She loves you, Ethan. Don't throw away 3 years over one bad night. Ethan looked at them quietly, his voice steady. With all due respect, ma'am, I didn't throw anything away. Your daughter did. They tried to convince him, guilt him, reason with him. But how do you reason with a heart that's already shattered? Back at his apartment, the silence was suffocating. The living room still looked like a celebration waiting to happen. Bouquets sat in vases. A Mr. and Mrs. sign leaned against the wall. Half-packed honeymoon luggage sat by the door. Ethan walked through it slowly, like a stranger visiting a crime scene. He stopped by the wedding gifts, boxes wrapped in gold paper, ribbons still perfect, and ripped one open. Inside was a coffee maker from Derek. He stared at the label for a long time before whispering, "Of course." He sat down and laughed, quietly at first, then bitterly. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief. That night, there was a knock on the door. He almost didn't answer, but something in his gut told him who it was. He opened it, and there she was, Victoria. Her hair was a mess. Makeup streaked down her cheeks, eyes red and swollen. "Ethan, please," she said, voice breaking. "I just need to explain." He didn't say a word. He turned and walked back inside. She followed him in, shutting the door softly behind her. The air between them was heavy, like the quiet before thunder. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I was drunk. I was stupid. Derek and I—" "Stop." His voice was calm, but sharp. "Don't insult me with excuses." Tears streamed down her face. "I wasn't thinking, Ethan. Please, you have to believe me." He turned, his eyes dark with exhaustion and hurt. "I believed you when you said you'd never hurt me. I believed you when you promised I was your forever. And you broke that. You don't get to ask me to believe anything else." She took a shaky step toward him. "I can't lose you. I'll do anything. I'll come off. I'll move. I'll go to therapy. Just please, don't end this." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said almost gently, "You already did." She fell to her knees, sobbing. "Ethan, please. I love you." He shook his head. "You don't love me. You love the idea of me. The stability, the approval, the comfort. But you didn't choose me, Victoria. You chose the thrill of what you were missing." She grabbed his hand, but he pulled away. "Ethan, we can fix this." "No," he said softly, his voice trembling. "We can't fix something that never truly existed." She looked up at him, broken, desperate. "Is there anything I can do to make you stay?" He hesitated. His heart still wanted to say yes, but his soul, it knew better. He walked to the counter, picked up the ring, and placed it in her hand. "Give this to someone who deserves to be lied to," he said quietly, "because that's not me." Then he opened the door. "Goodbye, Victoria." She stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. As she stepped out, she whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." Ethan replied, "You mean to get caught." And with that, he closed the door. That night, he sat alone in the dark. No music, no phone, just silence. The kind that hums when the noise of the world disappears, leaving only your thoughts. He wasn't angry anymore, just empty. He looked at the ring-shaped mark on his finger where the band had been and said quietly to himself, "I would have given you forever. You gave me a lie." People always say forgiveness heals. But some wounds aren't meant to be healed. They're meant to remind you who you were before you lost yourself trying to love the wrong person. Ethan didn't forgive her that night. He forgave himself for trusting her. It had been 3 weeks since Ethan ended things. The apartment was quiet now, painfully so. No more wedding plans. No more laughter echoing from the kitchen. Just silence, and the faint hum of his refrigerator keeping time with his thoughts. He'd gone back to work, tried to bury himself in projects. Everyone walked on eggshells around him. Sympathetic smiles whispered pity. He didn't need any of it. He just wanted peace. But peace rarely comes when you've been betrayed. Because even after you've walked away, the questions stay. One afternoon, Ethan met an old friend for coffee, Maya, one of Victoria's college roommates. She texted him out of nowhere. "Hey, I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. Can we talk?" At first, he didn't want to, but something in her tone felt urgent. They met at a small cafe downtown, one Victoria had loved. Ethan hadn't stepped inside since the breakup. The moment he entered, memories hit him like a wave. Maya waved from a corner table. She looked nervous. "Ethan," she said softly as he sat down, "I didn't know if I should reach out. But after what happened, there's something you deserve to know." He frowned. "About what?" She looked around, then lowered her voice. "About Derek and Victoria." His stomach tightened. "What about them?" Maya hesitated, fiddling with her coffee cup. "They weren't strangers before you came along, Ethan. They dated in college. For almost a year." The words hit him like a slap. He blinked. "What?" "I didn't think she'd ever tell you," Maya said quietly. "They were serious. Everyone thought they'd end up together. But her parents didn't approve. They said Derek wasn't stable enough. Too reckless, too unpredictable. They made her end it." Ethan leaned back, his mind racing. She never mentioned him. Not once. Maya nodded sadly. "Because when she met you, her parents adored you. You were everything Derek wasn't. Dependable, calm, successful. I think she wanted to love you, Ethan. I really do. But I also think part of her never stopped loving him." Ethan stared at his reflection in the coffee cup, silent. Maya reached across the table, her voice soft. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. But you should know the truth." Later that night, Ethan sat alone on his couch, Maya's words echoing in his head. They dated before. Her parents made her end it. She wanted to love you, but she never stopped loving him. He opened his old photo album, the one with pictures from the first year he and Victoria dated. He zoomed in on one photo, a Christmas party at Derek's place. There was Derek in the background, handing Victoria a drink. The way she looked at him, it wasn't casual. It was familiar. And suddenly, 100 little moments made sense. How she'd tensed the first time Ethan mentioned Derek's name. How she'd gone quiet when Derek joined their friend group dinners. How she always avoided eye contact when Derek teased her. Ethan had mistaken it for awkwardness, but it was guilt, history. He felt sick. He walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face, staring at his reflection. "I was never her choice," he whispered. "I was her approval stamp." He laughed bitterly, the kind of laugh that sounded more like pain. He remembered her saying once, "My parents love you. You make me feel safe." At the time, it felt like the highest compliment. Now, it sounded like confession. Days turned into weeks. Victoria still tried to reach him. Letters, calls, even messages through friends. He never responded. But one night, he received a message from an unknown number. "Ethan, please, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lost. I thought I was over Derek, but when I saw him again, it all came back. I'm sorry." He stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting it. No reply, because some truths don't deserve answers. That night, Ethan walked through his apartment, the walls still holding shadows of a life that never truly belonged to him. He picked up the wedding photo that never got taken, a blank frame that was supposed to hold their future, and whispered, "I loved you honestly. You loved me conveniently." He placed the frame back down, this time face down. The next morning, he made a decision. He packed away every trace of her, photos, letters, the ring receipt, everything. He put them all in a box, drove to the edge of the city, and left it by the river. The current would take it away, just like time would take the pain. As he watched the box drift downstream, Ethan said softly, You can't lose what was never truly yours. Then he turned away. For the first time in months, he didn't feel heavy. He felt lighter. The cruelest truth isn't the one that breaks your heart. It's the one that makes you realize it was never real to begin with. Ethan thought Victoria's betrayal started that night, but it began the moment she chose him for the wrong reasons. The months that followed were quiet, too quiet first. When love dies suddenly, it leaves behind a strange kind of silence. Not peaceful, not calm, just empty. Ethan woke up every morning to that silence. No good morning texts, no half-sipped cups of coffee beside his. Just him, the ticking clock, and the echo of everything that was supposed to be. But pain has its own kind of rhythm. And slowly, that emptiness began to change. He started running again. At first, only to clear his mind. Then, to remind himself that he could still move forward, literally. The first run hurt. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, and every block reminded him of the route he used to jog with Victoria. But by the third week, it was different. He didn't see her anymore when he ran. He just saw himself. At work, his boss called him in one afternoon. "Ethan, I know it's been a rough few months, but I've seen how you've handled things. Focused, steady, reliable. I'm promoting you to project lead." For a moment, Ethan just blinked. He hadn't even realized anyone was watching. The promotion wasn't about money or status. It was about something deeper. Validation. Proof that he could rebuild without the people who broke him. That night, he didn't celebrate with friends or drinks. He just stood on his balcony, city lights flickering below, and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone, just to life, for letting him start again. Around that time, Ethan started seeing his friends again. Real friends. The ones who stayed quiet during the drama, who didn't take sides, who just said, "When you're ready, we're here." And they were. They'd drag him out on weekends, introduce him to new people, new experiences. At first, he resisted. Polite smiles, short visits. But little by little, laughter came back. Not forced, not guarded, just real. Then one evening, he went to a charity event his company sponsored. He wasn't expecting anything, just another work obligation. That's where he met Lena, the event organizer. She was nothing like Victoria. No polished perfection, no rehearsed charm. Just kind eyes and a laugh that made conversations feel easy. They talk about everything but relationships. Travel, favorite books, bad coffee, and the absurdity of adulting. Ethan didn't feel sparks or fireworks. He felt calm. When she smiled at him, it wasn't with intent. It was with understanding. And for the first time in months, Ethan realized not every connection has to come with pain. Days turned into weeks. Victoria's messages stopped. Derek's name never came up again. Life simply moved on. One Sunday, Ethan took a drive to the river, the same place where he'd left that box of memories. He stood there quietly, watching the current drift by. The water was clear that day, calm, shimmering under the sun. He realized something profound. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even sad. He just didn't feel anything toward her. And that was the real closure. As he turned to leave, he saw a couple taking wedding photos near the bridge. The same kind of joy he once imagined for himself. But instead of bitterness, Ethan smiled, because he finally understood. Some love stories are meant to teach you how to love, not who to love. That night, he wrote something in his journal, a habit he'd picked up to keep his thoughts clear. I used to think walking away meant losing. But now I know walking away is choosing yourself when someone else refuses to. He closed the book, feeling lighter than he had in years. For the first time since it all fell apart, Ethan didn't go to bed replaying the past. He went to bed thinking about tomorrow. When you've been broken, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. Ethan didn't need revenge, closure, or apologies. He just needed to rise again, quietly, steadily, until one day he realized he already had. A full year had passed. 12 quiet months that rebuilt Ethan's world, piece by piece. The scars were still there, but they no longer hurt to touch. They were proof of survival, not reminders of loss. He'd moved into a new apartment, brighter, simpler. The kind of space that didn't echo with memories. There were plants by the window now, sunlight on clean floors, and laughter that came from his own joy. Work was thriving. His team respected him. His ideas were being heard, and his calm leadership became the company's quiet backbone. Ethan had even started volunteering at a youth center on weekends, mentoring kids who reminded him of the boy he used to be, hopeful, uncertain, and too trusting. Life, for once, was peaceful, until one Saturday afternoon, fate decided to turn a page. He was at a cafe near the park, laptop open, coffee steaming beside him, when a familiar voice broke through the chatter. "Ethan?" He froze. That voice. He looked up slowly. There she was, Victoria. Time had changed her. Her once flawless confidence seemed replaced by something quieter, heavier. Her hair was shorter, her smile faint, like someone who'd learned what loss really meant. For a moment, neither spoke. It was as if time itself had paused, holding its breath between them. Finally, she managed a small, trembling smile. "It's been a while." Ethan nodded calmly. "It has." She gestured to the empty seat across from him. "May I?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was final. Victoria's eyes scanned him. The quiet confidence in his posture, the calm in his voice. He wasn't the same man she broke. He was stronger now, and it showed. "You look good," she said softly. "Thanks," he replied. "You too." But she didn't. Not really. There was a sadness in her eyes that no makeup could hide. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I heard about your promotion and the mentoring program. You've done well for yourself." He smiled faintly. "I've been lucky." She swallowed hard. "I wanted to reach out so many times, but I didn't know what to say." Ethan leaned back, looking at her, not with anger, but with understanding. "There's nothing left to say, Victoria. We said everything the day I walked away." Tears welled in her eyes. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she whispered. "I thought I could move on, but I couldn't. Derek, and I didn't last. He wasn't who I thought he was. And when it all fell apart, I realized." Ethan stopped her gently. "Don't," he said softly. "You don't owe me an explanation." She shook her head desperately. "But I do. You were the one person who loved me right, and I threw it away. I see you now, calm, sure of yourself, and I hate that I'm not the one beside you anymore." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am." Ethan looked at her, really looked. He remembered the girl he once wanted to spend forever with. He remembered the laughter, the plans, the heartbreak, and then he realized he felt nothing but peace. "I know you're sorry," he said quietly, "and I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't the same as going back." Victoria's tears fell silently. "Is there someone else?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan smiled faintly. "There's me." That answer broke her. Because it wasn't cruel, it was honest. He stood, picking up his coffee cup. "Take care of yourself, Victoria." She reached out, as if to stop him, but he was already walking away. Through the cafe window, she watched him disappear into the sunlight, tall, steady, unshaken. And in that moment, she finally understood what she'd lost. Not just the man who loved her, but the man who had healed without her. That night, Ethan went home, sat on his balcony, and looked out at the city lights. He didn't think of her. He didn't think of the past. He thought of the journey, of how far he'd come. He took a deep breath and smiled. Because walking away hadn't been the end of his story. It had been the beginning. When love betrays you, walking away feels like loss. But one day, you look back and realize it wasn't loss. It was freedom. Ethan didn't just survive heartbreak. He outgrew it. And sometimes, that's the greatest victory of all.